Welcome back to Tethered and Whole. I'm your host, Matt Weld, and I'm glad you're here. You know, when I was in 7th grade, my favorite teacher was Miss Kelly. Polson Middle School was an old building with uneven wood floors that squeaked when you walked and staircases that seemed to, appear out of nowhere, something like Hogwarts. And in the middle of that 2-story building sat a quiet courtyard with a small greenhouse that stayed locked, except for the key that Miss Kelly kept in her classroom. At 12, me, awkward, full of braces and a mouthful of metal, and a guy who was bullied for not fitting the status quo, I dreaded after lunch recess. And since I had to brush my teeth after lunch anyway, Miss Kelly suggested I borrow her keys and tend the greenhouse plants instead. It wasn't much of a setup, just rows of pots of red geraniums. But it gave me refuge, and her compassion changed my life in ways I didn't fully understand until years later. Frankly, it's why I became a teacher, and fittingly, why I taught 7th grade science. That experience taught me something important about compassion, something really important about empathy. Compassion allows us to step back, recognize another person's experience, and respond thoughtfully, while empathy is when we feel what others feel, either emotionally, by sharing their feelings, or cognitively, by understanding their perspective through knowledge. Both matter, but empathy can sometimes pull us into someone else's emotional storm, while compassion gives us enough space to act wisely. Empathy feels the storm, compassion builds the shelter. And before we talk about compassion for others, we have to talk about compassion for ourselves. Self-compassion means treating ourselves with kindness and understanding when we fall short. And it's not indulgence or a free pass. It's an antidote to harsh self-criticism. Research shows that self-compassion protects against perfectionism, shame, and secondary traumatic stress. And often the way we talk to ourselves becomes the way we talk to others, meaning if we're critical inside, we're likely critical outside too. Building self-compassion allows us to extend authentic compassion outward. In schools, this matters because compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress, terms that are often used interchangeably, actually describe the emotional and physical exhaustion that comes from caring for others who carry trauma. And trauma walks into classrooms every day through students and staff alike. And without systems to address it, secondary traumatic stress spreads, showing up as exhaustion, insomnia, denial, compulsive behaviors, and poor self-care. And compassion fatigue doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been carrying more than one heart at a time. That's why trauma-informed culture matters at every level, and why managing secondary traumatic stress often comes back to simple but powerful practices like self-compassion, like self-awareness, boundary setting, and advocating for those personal needs. Closely related to all of this is moral distress, which happens when we know the right thing to do but feel unable to do it, like watching a good kid fail a class or seeing a colleague penalized for exceeding sick days to care for an aging parent. And when personal values collide with institutional rules, the result is often frustration, cynicism, or burnout. And research shows that when moral distress isn't addressed, it can lead to anger, it can lead to withdrawal, or a quiet erosion of our moral compass, which is why frameworks like the 4 R's are helpful. Recognize the situation and emotions clearly. Release what you can't control. Reconsider by reframing and exploring new approaches, and restart with fresh strategies. Now, another term, burnout, as defined by the World Health Organization, is a workplace syndrome caused by chronic stress that hasn't been successfully managed. And it shows up as emotional exhaustion, cynicism or withdrawal, and reduced professional efficacy. Not as a personal failure, but as an occupational condition. In schools, burnout looks like absenteeism, lowered engagement, and rising negativity. Yet research consistently shows that educators who practice self-compassion and maintain healthy boundaries are less likely to burn out. Managing burnout often means returning to basics like prioritizing sleep or movement and nutrition, setting boundaries, and building support systems, all the while developing the self-awareness to notice early warning signs with curiosity instead of denial. It also means knowing how to respond when others unload on you, because teachers often become emotional first responders for stressed students or colleagues. And while you're not a therapist, you can still help by listening actively, by validating feelings, and referring people to appropriate supports, without swapping war stories or rushing to fix what isn't yours to fix. Sometimes the most compassionate response is simply saying, "That sounds really hard," or "I don't know what to say, but I'm here." In the end, compassion in schools is both a calling and a challenge. It sustains students and colleagues, but without boundaries and self-care, it can drain us into fatigue, moral distress, or burnout. And the studies remind us that self-compassion is not a luxury. It's a professional necessity. By practicing kindness toward ourselves, setting clear limits, and building systems of support, we protect our own well-being while modeling resilience for our students. Because compassion isn't just an act of care for others. It's a skill that allows educators to stay whole in the most demanding of environments. That's it for this week on Tethered and Whole. I hope to see you same place, same channel next week.